Hello and welcome to the second episode in our Legends of RC series from RC Empire, and welcome to part 1 of our look at this incredible, iconic Kyosho USA-1. And what an absolutely awesome truck this is. For me, this is one of the first RC trucks I remember as a kid, and it is still very cool. Because of the condition and the dirt and grime on this truck, we're going to be covering this in 3 or 4 videos. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at the amazing original box, going through some of the background and history of the truck, and taking a look at the chassis before we begin a full restoration and bring this beast back to its former glory. And in the next video, we'll be going over the restoration and tearing the truck down to take a very detailed look at the construction and components of this truck before we finish off with a full startup and running video. So let's get straight into this. Now amazingly, we still have the original USA-1 box. Now note that this is actually one of the very early models which did not include an engine in the box, and it actually came in a much smaller box than the electric version, which we'll take a look at later on in this series. The size of this box is actually quite small. It's 465mm across, 435mm top to bottom, and 165mm high, which is almost half the size of the one we saw from the Tamiya TXT1 from the last episode. But as you'll see in the coming videos, apart from the massive tyres, there really isn't a lot to this truck. You will notice that with later models, there was a big sticker on the front of the box with the GS21R printed in big writing, and this was the engine that Kyosho decided to include with the almost ready to run kit. Now in the mid to late 90s, this almost ready to run kit with an engine cost £399, which compared to the other models out at the time was a lot of money, and that kit still needed a transmitter and electrical gear, so these trucks were not cheap. On the front of the box, we have a nice big image of the truck, along with some details and cool specs here. And at the bottom, we have some technical specs, the required equipment to get this kit running, and a picture of Everett and the original USA-1 monster truck which this was based on. But unfortunately, it has been sun damaged, which is a real shame. On the bottom, we have a few more specs and a labelled picture, some awesome action shots, and a little paragraph here describing the truck. And interestingly, it says that this chassis was based on that of the Kyosho Burns. Quickly, on the sides we have a few more pictures which are not sun damaged, so you can get an idea of the original colours of this box. And on the top, a couple of featured components and the truck with its massive tyres pulling some stones. And that says there, RC truck pulling is very popular in the US. Tractor pulling may cause excessive wear of clutch and gears, and modifications may be necessary. Before we get onto the truck, inside the box we have our transmitter, which is a Sanwa-Saber, and this is just a really basic stick transmitter, and you can actually still buy the modern version of this for around £40. We also amazingly have the original build manual, and there's something very interesting in here which we'll take a look at in our second or third episode. But you've got all your normal build instructions as well as the starting instructions, which again for this truck are definitely something different, and we'll be referring to this manual quite a bit in the later videos. And finally, we've got a couple of spare parts. So here we've got some swing shafts, some rear hub carriers, upper suspension arms, and in here we have these very special brand new shiny diffs. Now Now these have metal gears and a plastic housing here, and in fact I've never seen inside one of these, so we're going to open it up and take a look. And we've got some beveled gears and a few spare bearings, and it is excellent to have a few spare parts like these lying around, especially on such an old truck. Now onto the actual truck itself. As mentioned, we will not be taking a look at it in a massive amount of detail in this video because of the layers of mud, dirt and grime caked all over it. But what we can do is get an idea of how awesome this monster truck is and take a look at it before the restoration in its natural state. And it is absolutely incredible. For me, this right here has always been my dream truck. I can remember following my brother to the local hobby store when I was around 10 years old. As we were standing there waiting for some parts for a Kyosho field beetle, someone came and landed one of these massive monster trucks with huge tyres on the counter, and it has stayed in my mind ever since. I was actually worried that when we got one of these trucks, all these years later, it would seem a lot smaller, average, and not as cool looking as I remember. But I can tell you right now, it is absolutely as awesome and massive and iconic as I remember it. And I still think it's one of the coolest monster trucks ever made. It's got this wide stance, these fat tyres and a massive ground clearance, and it doesn't seem top heavy or like it will tip over as you drift it around in the dirt, and I cannot wait to get this monster fired up. Now unfortunately, one of the key parts of this truck, the iconic USA-1 body, is missing, and I will definitely try to source an original one of these during this series, especially since we will be restoring the whole truck back to brand new. But what we have instead is this 1988 Humvee body. And you can tell the year, and you can tell that it's not a Hummer because of these big crosses all over the doors, and these embossed mimic body clips pressed into the body, as well as the front grille. Now this is actually a Proline Hummer H1 body, and they don't make these anymore, but they are really cool. For a minute, we actually got excited because we thought it was a resprayed Mad Force armor body, but that is slightly different. Now with this body, it is interesting to see what the last owner did with the paint job. They have kind of splashed and webbed this metallic green as a first layer, and then I think they've gone with a dark metallic purple sprayed around the sides, and then finally come in and spray the top and middle sections with this lighter pinky purple. And then what they've done is come in and sealed everything off with this dark matte paint, which is like a charcoal layer that sealed everything off, and it is now quite a heavy body. I don't know if I like it. It's got an excellent fade on it and a really good paint job, but I don't think the green webbing has quite worked. It just looks a little too messy to me, although under UV light it does this. I think maybe it needs something a bit more mean, or of course the original body. But actually, looking at it, it doesn't look like it's ever been used because there is not a single scratch or piece of dirt on it. Or it's been very well looked after and never crashed. So unlike the Kyosho RS200, which we did a full restoration on, I don't think it's worth stripping this one back and respraying. Now you can see the truck is filthy. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's not super clean either. I actually know the guy who we got this from, and he does look after these trucks very well, so I'm hoping mechanically it is perfect, although it's still filthy. Now, we are not going into too much detail yet, but quickly, a few observations. We can see that this has actually got the same style metal topped fuel tank as our 1988 Kyosho RS200, and actually it's quite a big old tank and made of pretty thick plastic. We've got dual shocks on each corner with double wishbone independent suspension. With adjustable camber on the front and back, an adjustable toe angle on the front, which normally you have to buy as an upgrade on a lot of modern trucks you see today, but on this truck that came as standard. And finally, at the front end, we've got this massive quarter scale servo, a 2-channel receiver, and of course these massive heavy duty Kyosho monster truck tires. And that is it for this video. We don't really want to go digging into too much detail yet. In some areas the truck is so dirty you can hardly see anything, and it's really grubby to handle. But in the next video we'll be back with a full restoration, strip down and reassembly of the whole truck, followed by a very detailed look at all the components and mechanisms on this monster before we go ahead and attempt to fire it up for the first time. So please rate and subscribe and let us know if there's anything in particular you would like to see with this truck. I hope you saw something new. Keep an eye out for our second episode and the rest of this series. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.